So, what turned you from that into a true Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school?
Just the fact that there was one.
Yeah.
So you got to think, man, I started in the late 90s. Like jujitsu wasn't on every street corner by any means. Sorry, my phone's like going off like crazy. I put it on do not disturb and
Oh my goodness.
we're
Yeah.
gonna
Keep
throw
in
it.
mind, just while you're thinking about it, in '97, I was 3. Okay. So you
Yeah,
might have to
that's
paint,
wild.
paint a pretty good word picture for me on this. I've
Yeah,
talked to a lot
so
of people about it, but I would still might need a word
yeah.
picture.
So man, like there was no Brazilian jiu-jitsu, right? I mean, like you might find a blue belt running a club at a YMCA or in the back of a taekwondo school every other state, right? Like
Hmm.
there just was no jiu-jitsu. Like I can tell you the first purple belt I ever met was at the Torrance Academy out in California, right? Like and it was just like, oh my God, like
Uh-huh.
that guy's got a purple belt. It was amazing. I can tell you the first 3 purple belts I met outside of California. Jack McVicker, Scott Sullivan, Eric Sullivan, right? Like it was not what it is today by any means. You know, I've got more black belts under me than probably were in the United States at that point. Like
Uh-huh.
it's insanity, but yeah, man. So like there was just no jujitsu, and then man, I always give Greg Elder a lot of credit for he ran a little club in Ohio, and he moved to Indiana, I believe, for his job, and started again just a little club. It was in the basement of an insurance building, so it was very like my basement I'm sitting in now was bigger than the basement I trained in.
How many
When I
guys
first
trained?
started. Oh man, if there were 10 guys on the mat, it was packed. And I don't even know if we ever had 10 guys on the mat at the same time. It was, and it was over an hour away from me. Like it was a far drive, and I went there 2, 3 times a week. Cause that's all he had. Like usually he had 2 classes a week. And sometimes we'd get together like in his home basement, just a couple of us. Right. And he would be like, guys, I was going over some of my old VHS tapes that I recorded when I was at the academy, and because he had done a lot of privates with like I believe like Holker and Hoyes and
Huh?
Horion and stuff like that, and trained with Kaiki a lot. So he had all these like old tapes and stuff of stuff he had just been doing, and he would never show us the tapes. He would watch them, and then like we would go practice them in the basement. Um, but and yeah, and then I was doing the judo and the Japanese jiu-jitsu a couple of times a week, and train with my buddies on the off days. And so yeah, I was doing 7 days a week and some form of grappling, but
What was your intention in it? Were you just trying to learn, you'd enjoyed it, or were you wanting to be a fighter? What was your thought?
yeah, so both. So I think like, man, I was always just drawn to the martial arts, and it was more of like just a means of self-defense, like I was attracted to fighting. Like I didn't go out and
Hmm.
get in fights ever. I mean, a couple here and there as a kid, like when you're 8 years old, getting little scuffles or whatever. But I was just always, I was always a big fan of Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris and like all the old, kung fu movies and stuff. But I think ultimately it was just I just always had like this desire to be able to defend myself. No real like goal in mind, I guess. But then when I started training, I think, man, like when I saw the UFC come out, I was like, I think I want to do that. And back then, man, like if you were doing jujitsu and you weren't looking to fight,
Hmm.
it was weird. You were like the
That was
weird
what it
guy.
was for, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like I remember we had one guy and he didn't compete and fight, and we were all just like, "Why are you here,
Yeah.
weirdo?" And now like 80% of my people, they're like, "No, I want to come in, have fun, get in shape, learn some
Hmm.
stuff." And yeah, definitely different dynamic. Like everybody in the room was always wanting to, if not, I would say probably 60% of the people were trying to do MMA, at least a little bit, not maybe not on a professional level, but just as a hobby, like. um, but yeah, man. So like, I started doing that. I started jujitsu in 97. So like late June, early July of 97. And I think I took my first MMA fight in March of 98.
And
Like
so, how did your first MMA fight go?
great.
Yeah.
Fought a, it went great. No, so I fought a guy. He was a Hapkido guy, who had done some jujitsu, went out. We had a little standing exchange. It was me punching him, and then I took him down and mounted him. He rolled out. He rolled for a footlock. I rolled up, mounted him, armbarred him, 1 minute exactly. Felt really good. It's like, cool. I was actually kind of sad it was over. You know, I was like, man, I trained really hard for 1 minute. And then, which was, I think I jinxed myself because I went back. I was in the locker room changing. I was getting ready to come out and watch the rest of the fights. And they come in, they're like, hey, Shoney Carter needs an opponent. So that what they had done was they did a 4-man tournament at middleweight. I think the limit was like 168 or something like that. I don't remember what the weight class was. I know I was 163 because I was the same weight like throughout high school until my late 20s. But yeah, they came in and they're like, hey, so Shad Williams, who is Sean Williams' brother.
Sean's brother, right?
Yeah. So Shad actually fought in the tournament that night and broke his thumb because he wanted to box a karate guy instead of doing jiu-jitsu. Shame on you, Shad. But yeah, he broke his thumb. So they came to me and they're like, hey, you want to, fight in the final in this tournament? And I was like, no, I had my fight. This is what I trained for. And they said, well, he just gets the belt, and if you fight, you get the belt. And I was like, well, Eric Moon's my weight. He had the other fight. And they're like, yeah, but you're the alternate. I'm like, well, can't he be an alternate? We're all the same weight. And they're like, no, if you don't take it, it's over. And I'm like, all right, cool. Yeah, I'll fight him. Why not? So
did you know anything about Shoney at the time?
Negative. Like, I don't like, I found out a lot about him the next day, like, oh man, he was the Extreme Challenge champion. He's actually a professional fighter and this and that. But man, we had a good fight. Like on our feet, I think I actually won most of the exchanges on our feet. And man, he just out wrestled me like you would not believe. Like it was like lat drops and suplexes and hip tosses. And like, he controlled where the fight was the whole match. On the ground, it was either way, like nothing, neither one of us had anything. He probably had side control on me a couple times, but never any real damage or anything. And yeah, I lost the decision, rightfully so. He definitely controlled the match. But it was a 12-minute round and a 3-minute overtime. So it was a weird.
Single 12-minute round.
Yeah.
Oh,
so, and like the overtime was just, it wasn't like, oh, it was really close, let's go to an overtime. It was like, no, you made it to 12 minutes. Let's add 3 more, like, so yeah, I had that 15-minute match with him that night. And like I said, he ended up winning and getting a little belt.
Man. Do you talk to Shoney ever?
Yeah. Every once in a while, man, we run into each other at like events and stuff. And yeah, just chit chat.
I went up to, this would have been maybe 2 years ago at this point. I went up to I want to say it was like 15-year anniversary for Mark Vivas' school. And he invites like every black belt from Chicago to attend. And, Mark's a good dude. A lot of people are there. There is like 30 black belts. Well, every time somebody gets promoted, they've got to come down and shake everybody's hand. And I'm like, man, I don't know any of these guys. So I was like, hey, congratulations. I assume it's well-deserved, but maybe it's not. I don't know. And so, and like they would all, everyone would kind of like do every person pretty respectfully. Thank you, professor. Thank you, professor. And like, I didn't do anything. I've never met you before. It's not, I didn't help you in any way. You're welcome. Keep up the good work. Well, the funny thing is Shoney Carter's standing behind me. And so thank you, professor. Thank you, professor. Thank you, professor. Shoney. And he would be Shoney, he would be exactly who he is. He'd be hugging people and telling them like, yeah, man. And I would ask the people after like, hey, have you ever trained with Shoney? And they'd be like, no, I've never met him. Like, oh, okay. He was acting like you guys were best friends since like high school, like he's so proud of you for getting your blue belt and stuff.
Right.
And he's a different dude, but he's still the same dude that he's always been. Yeah. There was something else, a little note. You said you remember the first purple belts that you met. Do you remember your first black belt that you?
Oh, what's funny is I probably really don't. I mean, it would have been. Let me think. I can easily get to this. It had to have been Hoist, right? It had to have been Hoist Gracie. Yeah, I'm sure.
Because he was the only black belt at the time. So
yeah. So, man, I think, it was definitely at the Torrance Academy. Went out there, probably met. Yeah, man, it was either Hoist or Horion, like first introduction handshake. You know what I mean? I don't think I met any before that. But yeah, so I started in June of '97, and I did nationals out in Torrance in like September, October of 97. So I hadn't been training very long before I was already going to California to compete. Right. Um,
What year did you get your black belt?
2007.
Okay, so this is fun. That was actually like the year before I started training. Because I asked you, do you remember your first black belt that you ever met? What's funny is you were actually the first black belt that I ever met.
Are you serious?
Yes, you were. My coach Kyle was a purple belt, and he got on. I want to say it was like an invitational thing. It was the Ohio
Yeah.
Grappling Challenge. Uh, and I had been training about 2 or 3 months. Jack was Kyle's coach, McVicker was Kyle's coach, but I had never met Jack. He had never come in for a seminar yet. So I'd never seen a brown belt. So that was the first time seeing brown and black belts. And I remember like one of my buddies was like, "Oh yeah, that's James Clingerman. He's a black belt." And I'm like, "No way. Like, there's no way there's a real black belt here." And we are all starstruck. Kyle knows you. So it's like, like we get
so Kyle's awesome, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we get to talk to you and stuff. And we're like, dude, this is crazy. We are meeting a real life celebrity right now. And so I'm 14, maybe at the time. I do what any 14-year-old would do, get on YouTube as soon as I get home. James Clingerman Jiu-Jitsu used to have a video. I couldn't find it. I tried to find it like in this last week. You had a video of you showing a no arm triangle. I believe you have like a BJJ Fanatics video on YouTube where you're showing a no arm triangle, but that was not the video. There's some, whatever video it was, like it was you showing a no arm triangle. And it was the first submission that I ever hit on a blue belt, like a year later, because I was just a little chubby kid everyone beat down. And one day some guy had been beating me up for a few hours, goes to double underpass me. And I was like, hey, that black belt that I remember, he did something from here, and I put him in it and finished him. And I was like, well, I guess I am a professional jiu-jitsu guy now. I guess I'm the best ever now.
Totally.
Yeah, I guess it's time to retire.
But that's awesome.
Yeah,
how come I wasn't your first guest?
You know what? That is a great question. My first guest was my dad. I feel like that's excusable. All right. You were training 10 years of jiu-jitsu before you got your black belt. Who gave you your black belt?
So a guy named Mario Roberto. So I got my blue from Hoist, and then in 99, so I said, the three purple belts I met outside of Cali were McVicker and then the Sullivans, Scott and Eric. So we actually started training with those guys just in a garage, and then Eric ended up opening his own school. So his instructor was a guy named Mario Roberto. Mario was under Aníbal Braga. So I got promoted purple, brown, and black, all from Mario. Every belt promotion I've had, oddly enough, for some reason, has been in October. Even my judo brown belt came in October of 99. So like October is a good month for my promotions, I guess. So I got my blue in October of 97, got my purple October 31st, actually on Halloween, 2001, my brown October 30th, 2004, my black October 20th, 2007. So this October 20th, technically I'll be a fourth degree. It'll be my 14th year.
Nice. So what belt were you when you started your school?
Blue, like 3-stripe blue belt.
And that really wasn't uncommon back then. That was actually, you were probably late to the party starting your school as a 3-stripe blue belt.
Right.
What was that like? What was your thought on it? Was it something you started in your basement, or was it, I want a storefront? What was kind of your thought?
Yeah. So I actually started, I just leased a secondary room from a Taekwondo school. They had like a little mat area that everyone walked directly across to get to the changing rooms and the bathroom and the alley. So,
with their shoes on.
of course.
Yeah. With their cleats from football practice on.
Yeah. So like, finally I was like, hey, we cannot wear shoes back here. And they're like, what about the bathroom? I'm like, carry them. Like, yeah, it was me mopping like 15 times a day and stuff. But yeah, I had a real small space. It was like, again, probably smaller than my basement now. I think it was like 20 by 22 or something like that. Like pretty small, I was teaching jiu-jitsu, ended up teaching kids and MMA and kickboxing and everything out of that room. I was in that room for like 2.5 years before the Taekwondo owner, the guy who was running the Taekwondo school actually bought his own building. and it was a giant single room. So he pulls me aside one day, like I'm on my way out after teaching class. He's like, "Hey, got a minute?" I'm like, "Yeah, man, absolutely." He's like, "Yeah, man, hey, I'm buying this building. It's like a mile down the road. It's so big. It's immaculate. It's beautiful." Tells me all these great things about it. And I'm like, "Cool, cool, cool." And he's like, "Yeah, but it's only one room. So your program's got to go." I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, when do you move out?" And he's like, "2 weeks." Like,
oh,
Jesus, cool. Some heads up might've been nice, but, yeah, so I moved my program into one of my students' garages for like 2 months while we looked for a building, and then ended up opening when I actually leased a storefront down in Greenwood, which was like way on the other side of town. So like only like a couple like super hardcore guys even followed.
did you have a job at the time, or were you full time?
So when the school first started in the back of the Taekwondo place, I had a full-time job building video monitors. It was a job I had directly out of high school. You know, it was a pretty good job, man. It paid well, paid 100% insurance, had 401k, had all the things, you know, and
All the things you get in as a jiu-jitsu coach, right? As a
oh
jiu-jitsu
yeah,
school owner,
it
same
just comes
stuff.
right with it. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Um, but yeah, I had to wait till purple belt. All the 401k kicked in at purple.
Oh, okay. That
Um,
makes sense.
but yeah, and then yeah, the company actually they sold to some guys from Canada, and those guys just ran it into the ground, and it closed. And man, I tried like a couple temp jobs and stuff, and I just didn't want to do anything. It's just working sucks.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I was just like, hey, just asked my wife. I was like, how you feel about me just teaching jujitsu full time? Like just open doing, you know, that's when I started the kids and the kickboxing and like all the things, you know. And she's like, yeah, sounds good, you know. So
What
it was
what a
around that
crazy
time.
lady, right?
Yeah, she's a nut job.
Dude, that was same conversation with my wife. Hey, what if I just teach people to hug each other? Like, do you think that that would be good for us? And oh yeah, yeah, that'll work. Go ahead, go do that. And yeah, that's a unique characteristic of a spouse, though. I mean,
Oh
you
yeah.
still, I'm sure, running your school, you know that there are people that don't want their spouse to train at all.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, man.
much less take that kind of. It really is a crazy risk. It doesn't make a lot of sense. You know, you could just easily work any other job, but and but there's something to it that you're like, hey, I got to do this. I just have
Yeah,
to.
yeah. Yeah, and I would have
So,
made a lot more money doing anything else for that like first 8 years. I was like, this is horrible.
mhm,
Wish I
but
could eat.
dude, and that's I wish I could compete. I wish I could travel. I wish I could do anything.
Yeah,
But then once you get there, the beauty is then everyone says, "Oh man, you're so lucky."
right.
Man, you really lucked out. I wish I could I wish I could do what you do. And yeah, you're like, "Nah, you don't. Not at first at least. Now you
Yeah.
probably do."